So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming along to our webinar today. My name's Karina Urquhart, and I'm the Executive Director at BIC and your host for this BIC Brunch, or as one of our speakers has just pointed out to me, should probably really be called a BIC High Tea, given the latest start, which today is all about fixed layout in light of the EU Accessibility Act. Just some housekeeping before we get started. For those of you who are new to our webinars, questions will be answered after all the presentations have been given. You should see a little question box in your toolkit, I think probably on the right hand side of your screens. If you have any questions, just pop them in there and we'll be able to see them. You won't be identified at any point by asking the questions, so don't be shy. The event is being recorded so that we can use it in our marketing, post it to our YouTube channel eventually, and to allow anyone who wasn't able to attend this session today to still watch it later on. And as I've said before, you won't be identified in the questions and you won't be identified in the recording either. Please note that while this session will explore fixed layout in terms of the EAA or the European Accessibility Act, it shouldn't be considered in any way to be legal advice by any individual or organisation that's attending today or watching the video later on. And we won't be addressing any business specific issues in the questions. Excuse me. Finally, a gentle reminder that BIC is a neutral membership organisation, and as such, we politely ask that all attendees and speakers avoid any conversations or questions that might be considered anti-competitive or commercially sensitive. We'll be sharing the slides later on to you all, so if you don't get a chance to make a note of the links, don't panic, you'll be having that information sent to you shortly. So here's the agenda. We have 3 speakers lined up for you today. So we'll be starting off with Coco Ikong, ebook technical and design manager at Penguin Random House, followed then by Wendy Reed, accessibility and publishing standards lead at Rakuten Kobo, and Dov Johnson, CEO of the PDF Association. As I've already mentioned, there's a slot there for questions. So do make the most of having our experts here to answer any questions you may have today. We should be finished by about 4:30, hopefully. Yeah, so let's crack on. So before we do get started, a little bit about BIC for those of you who might be new to us. So BIC is a UK-based members organisation at the heart of the book industry. We create standards, best practices and resources and help organisations become more efficient, save money, become less wasteful and ultimately greener. We hold a unique position of trust, facilitating UK and international industry-wide collaboration to reach agreement on dependable standards and best practice in the supply chain. We do this in a variety of ways, including running 5 strategic committees focusing on libraries, metadata, physical, digital and green supply chains. We offer training events and workshops and execute supply chain related projects for and on behalf of the wider, for and on behalf of our membership, but also the wider book industry as well. We also operate 3 industry recognised accreditation schemes. So you can find out more about everything we do on our website. Before we get into the main body of today's session, I just wanted to share with you our brand new Accessibility Hub. This is a new resource on our website. It's in the Resource Centre and it's free for everyone to access, whether you're a BIC member or not. And it covers a variety of topics, including industry standards, organisations that are working on accessibility, training courses, the impact on end users, validation tools, our accessibility webinar series, so all of our recordings and slides are on there, and much more. So do, when you get a moment, go and have a look. This hub is an evolving resource and will be updated over time. And with that in mind, if you have any resources, ideas or pieces of useful information that you think would be good for us to add or that you'd like to see on here, please do get in touch. So where does today's session fit in? So this is the 5th session in our brand new series of webinars dedicated to accessibility, running from I think it was July until April or May next year, and possibly even beyond. Today, our expert speakers will guide us through the often complex topic of fixed layout titles. We'll be discussing when to go fixed layout, when not to, how best to tackle in light of the requirements of EAA, and we'll be addressing the challenges of EPUB fixed layout, but also hearing the technical side of how PDFs can also be made accessible. So without further ado then, I'd like to now invite the first of our speakers, Coco Ekong, to the virtual stage. Coco is ebook technical and design manager at Penguin Random House, and today he'll be starting his presentation with helpful definitions of what do we mean by reflowable and fixed layout EPUBs. We'll then be hearing about why, despite trying to reflow as much as possible, PRH are choosing fixed layout for certain titles and how they're making these titles as accessible as possible. He'll also be sharing some of the challenges of this from the perspective of the trade publisher. So just going to hand over the screen now to you. Ready? Are you ready? Excellent. So coming your way. Great.
All right. Excellent.
Okay. Right, over to you then.
Thank you. Can everyone see the slide?
Yes, can see the slide.
Brilliant. Right. So my name is Coco Ekong. I am the technical and design manager for ebook ops, Penguin Random House. And today I am going to be going through our perspective as a trade publisher on this topic. I know that the W3 Fixed Layout Accessibility Task Force are doing some good work on putting together guidance and best practice on this topic, and Wendy will be presenting on some of the technicalities around fixed layout accessibility. I'm going to be just briefly chatting about this from our perspective as a trade publisher, the challenges that we face and the steps that we're taking to ensure that our fixed layout front list is being made or produced in an accessible format as it can be. So I will start off with an overview of what fixed layout is. Unlike with reflowable EPUB, a fixed layout EPUB is a paginated publication, and each page is its own individual XHTML document. Content for each page is positioned within a defined viewport and with pixel perfect placement for every element within that viewport. This is different to a reflowable EPUB, in which multiple book pages, chapters even, can sit within a single XHTML document, and in which the amount of content visible on a screen page is largely determined by margin and font size. Depending on the reading environment, for example, in a web browser, there are techniques that can be used to provide a more adaptable fixed layout. For example, using responsive design to adapt containers and their content to different viewport sizes and orientations. And indeed, we use similar techniques for some of our complex reflowable ebooks to adapt their layout for different viewport widths. However, in the case of fixed layout books, each page is meant to correspond to a single page from the physical printed source, and is intended to be a one-to-one replication. So from a trade perspective, the ability to customize the reading experience beyond a point would run contrary to the whole point of what a fixed layout ebook should be, which is to deliver a true representation of the source material and preserve its visual layout and aesthetics. And this lack of flexibility is a primary reason why fixed layout EPUBs cannot be fully accessible, at least given the current state of the art at this point. This is true especially when it comes to content reflow restrictions, the ability to resize text and change font styles, all of which are a critical accessibility measure which would break layout and also deviate from the original print source. And then there are also color contrast concerns in those cases where deviating from the print source and hard coding color adjustments for some text or graphical elements, but not others, can lead to unpredictable and sometimes undesirable results in titles where the overall aesthetic is meant to work as a whole. So this would beg the question, why not just go reflow instead of fixed layout? As a default, we always strive to create reflowable versions of all of our titles. The many accessibility focused features of EPUB 3 reflow and its wide reading system support make it a much more comfortable, customizable, and accessible user experience. However, we do opt for fixed layout publications in some cases. Broadly speaking, titles in which the narrative and context is either heavily dependent on the relationship between layout and background imagery, or utilizes a nonlinear layout as a narrative technique. This would include most children's picture books, some young adult or adult illustrated books, and some graphic novels. Also titles for which a switch to reflow would discard much of the fundamental character and tone of the book. An example that you're seeing on the screen now is from The Fossil Hunter, is one of our books, and The Invisible Kingdom. There are also the very rare poetry title where a switch to reflow would discard the majority of the metering and message and the timing that's meant to be conveyed in the way the text is laid out. And these type of layouts are only possible given the pixel perfect precision provided by absolute positioning and fixed layout, and or as a flattened image. So given that we have to produce some of our titles, or we choose to produce some of our titles in fixed layout for these reasons, how do we make our fixed layouts as accessible as we can? It's important to stress that fixed layout EPUB will not meet EAA or WCAG 2.1a standards, largely because of the content modification and content restore restrictions inherent to the format. But just because it can't be fully accessible doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to make them as accessible as we can do. And I'm going to outline a few steps over the next few slides that we're trying to take towards this goal. So things we can do: follow a logical reading order in the markup, relying on CSS for positioning to aid screen readers able to properly navigate the content. We use semantic elements where we can, like headers or paragraphs, proper sectioning, instead of relying on generic spans and divs, which is the typical output. We also would be using a single and complete table of contents via the NavDoc for ebooks where a table of contents may span several pages. And where content is designed to be read across a spread, we would be using a single document to capture both pages of the spread. But more importantly, raising awareness further upstream. Because the goal of fixed layout for us is to deliver as much parity as we can with the print version of the book. A small team called from various parts of the business is working on internal documentation for our print designers to raise some awareness of the challenges we face when converting from source. And these are things that are largely out of our control. Things such as font choice, font sizes, content structure, color contrast, as well as general best practice guidance for print and other digital media. These are things which we feel will also benefit the print edition. There are other challenges that will take a bit more time to figure out. And these things would necessitate new technical solutions and, of course, reading system support. As an example, cases where providing alt text would not be enough to convey the full context and narrative of everything on a text, on a page or spread. Maybe where a separate accessible serialization or alternate view might be required. Also raising further questions such as who will be responsible for pretty much writing a book within a book, and how far we can expect, or how wide we can expect, reading system adoption of these new technologies. For now, though, our focus is on what we can do given the current state of the art. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Coco. Can I just ask you a few questions? How many, roughly, approximately, would you, if you're happy to answer this, how would you say roughly how many of your your titles are sort of receiving this fixed layout treatment, do you think?
I would say that we are currently laying out plans for our front list. So I couldn't give you an exact number now.
Yeah.
But this is something that we're aiming for all of our front list.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And what if you're able to share? If you're not, that's absolutely fine. Just say so. Are there any plans afoot for backlists at all?
Yeah, that's another kettle of fish. I think the focus is the focus is primarily it is. The focus is primarily on front list, and once we get that ship shape, then we will move to the backlist.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, that does make sense. Okay, and when you mention raising awareness upstream, what do you when you say upstream, what are you meaning there? Just in-house or upstream in terms of the supply chain or something else?
We're talking about both. So first off, we would be talking about in-house. So the main concern here is because we are trying to essentially deliver parity with the print edition, it's important that the people creating the print edition understand what challenges we might face. Now, this is not being done. The point of this is not to tell them how to create their content, but it's just so that they are aware of what the difficulties might be, but also to make them aware of how these things could benefit the print edition when it comes to accessibility.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, I'm sure we'll have more questions coming through. Just keeping an eye on the question box there. So thank you for that, Coco. If I could ask you to please, while I'm talking, hand over to Wendy, if that's okay, so that Wendy can take the screen. And that would be great. While Coco's doing that, I will just introduce Wendy. So we're going to hear from Wendy Reed, who many of you, I'm sure, will be very familiar with already. Wendy is Accessibility and Publishing Standards Lead at Rakuten Kobo, and is a key stakeholder and contributor to W3C, where she holds various roles. And Wendy, you're going to talk with your W3C hat on today. With regards to what W3C are doing with, to help address the challenges of fixed layout, as we've heard from Coco already. So looking at best practice techniques, what can be done to make fixed layout titles more accessible with current standards, and what the future holds. So enough from me, over to you, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karina. And thank you, Coco, for an excellent introduction to the topic. So today I'm going to be talking about the W3C publishing activities efforts around fixed layout accessibility, and our focus on best practices and techniques. So just as a quick overview, if you're not familiar with what we've been up to, the EPUB Accessibility Fixed Layout Challenges and Best Practices document was published this year in 2024 to provide guidance to EPUB creators and reading systems on how they might create accessible EPUB fixed layout files. Now, a big caveat that Coco has already mentioned, but I'm going to repeat, that it's not currently possible to create fully accessible EPUB fixed layout files. Just to emphasize, they will never be fully accessible in their current form. This does not mean that we cannot do a great deal to make them as accessible as can be, and Coco has already done an excellent job outlining some of the things that I'm about to talk about. Most of the barriers to fixed layout accessibility come from text resizing, font style changes, and access to live text features. So when we talk about text resizing, we're talking about how the way that fixed layout titles are currently constructed and rendered means that text resizing is not possible. So a reader who might require a larger text or smaller text won't be able to do so in a fixed layout title. You're also not able to change the font style. So that means things like the font face, the spacing, the orientation of the text. And the last thing about live text features is things like dictionaries, translation, or text-to-speech can sometimes be blocked by the way that fixed layout is currently rendered or constructed. This is mostly in cases now where publishers are still not using live text on their screen, so they're not including the text in the XHTML. So we're actually seeing this go down. This is getting a lot better. But for fixed layout publications that still use, say, flattened images, this is a problem. When we produced the document, we wanted to look at the main areas that can be addressed to make fixed layout more accessible than the current standard and the current way that fixed layout titles are produced. And we focused on a couple kind of high-level areas. The first one being reading order, ensuring that the reading order of the content on the page is logical and that the reading order of the content does not cross back and forth over what we call the fold. Image descriptions, which we could probably have a whole separate session on their own, but providing image descriptions for all the content on the page, even complex content. Navigation, which can sometimes be overlooked, but is incredibly important to understanding and navigating the book. And this means things like tables of contents, page lists, and even landmarks. And lastly, I think a slightly overlooked topic that is essential to fixed layout, and I really appreciate that Coco kind of touched upon this already, visual presentation, ensuring that the visual design of the book, fonts, colors, images, follow accessibility guidelines and prioritize readability. So when we're talking about reading order is incredibly important for accessibility and in general, but especially for users of assistive technologies like screen readers. The visual order of elements on the page must match what we call the programmatic order, and that's the order of the elements in the code. So when a screen reader user is navigating through a page, an XHTML document in EPUB, they're going to go from the top of the document to the bottom of the document. Now, when you are building your books or creating, whatever tools that you use, or even if you're hand coding, which is less and less likely nowadays, it's really important to make sure that the order of things in code matches the visual order on the page. And that sounds straightforward, but we've definitely seen cases where things get put out of order, or because of layering in certain tools, the layering order actually impacts the programmatic order and results in a bad order for screen reader users. So it's really important that that programmatic order follows the visual order of the elements on the page. And when we think about spreads, because each page in a fixed layout EPUB is a single document, each page is a XHTML document, EPUB creators need to be careful about arranging their content when they put it in spreads. Coco kind of preempted my recommendation here about merging things in spreads if you do have a case where a two-page spread has content on both sides that needs to be read in a specific order. But when you can, you should avoid having this kind of cross the fold experience. You should, page 1, page 2, and keep that separate. This is because AT users, assistive technology users, are going to be moving through the document by element, and they're not going to be able to switch between documents easily. But I also point out, this is also very useful and very important for people who may be reading your books on small screens, like mobile phones. They may not want to look at the pages in the spread or be able to read the content. And so you don't want them to lose out just because they happen to be reading it on a small screen. Image descriptions. Again, this could probably be a whole session on its own, and there are people who are far more educated and better at this than I am. But I just wanted to call out that image descriptions depend on the content, the audience, and the context that they are used in. Some images may require really complex descriptions. Maybe it's a really complicated, visual novel. Maybe it is a chart or a visualization. But a lot of things can also have very simple explanations, and some things may not need them at all. But it's very important that image descriptions are contextual and use the surrounding content as well. Navigation. Navigation is essential for everyone. I think we all know that. So much of how books are constructed rely on navigation, our tables of contents, our indexes. But for print-disabled users, it can be essential to understand the content of the book to be able to navigate it. There are a lot of fixed layout books out there that have no table of contents at all, or I've seen cases where you get cover and main, and that's it. And that's not informative to the user, and that's not helpful to anyone in terms of navigation. I've seen table of contents just be images, but they're not linked in any way, and that's not helpful either. Don't forget that you can put links in fixed layout content, so please use that. But also, you can use table of contents, particularly in cases where the table of contents may span multiple pages. You can actually include a table of contents for the reading system specifically to use that's out of the linear reading order. And that is useful for reading systems because most have this ability to kind of have the external table of contents for navigational purposes. So don't forget about that. Page lists are easier to do with fixed layout because you have the page numbers and the page positions already, but it's still very important to have them. And landmarks. Now, I've put an asterisk next to landmarks because landmarks are incredibly useful for navigation, especially when they are used to point at key sections of the book, the cover, the main content, ending content. But I will fully acknowledge that reading systems are not consistent about how they show landmarks as part of navigation. There are some that do, there are some that don't. We recommend including them, especially because when they're there, should a reading system change their mind on this, it's a lot easier to implement something when you have books to test it with. So we strongly, strongly recommend using landmarks. For visual presentation, this is challenging. Coco kind of alluded to this and giving guidance back up the chain, but because we cannot resize or adjust text in fixed layout content, it doesn't mean that the visual presentation can't be used in a way to make the content more accessible. It's actually important to remember that with accessibility, disability is a broad umbrella of varying needs and conditions. And so, it can be easy to kind of fall back on focusing on, say, the needs of blind or low vision users, when we also have people with cognitive disabilities or learning disabilities that may actually greatly benefit from the use of color, the use of images, the use of icons in the content to make it more understandable for them. And so when you're thinking about the visual presentation and design of your content, you really, really want to focus on, even though we might not be able to resize the text or adjust it, can we make choices in the visual design of our books that make it more accessible? So this means thinking about the font size and text spacing, your margins. It means using very consistent visual styles. So, your H1s always look like H1s. Your asides are a very consistent style, figures, things like that. A consistent use of color and a good use of color and good color contrast. And also things like font selection and picking fonts that are really readable. I definitely, sympathize with the desire to have, very stylistic or beautiful fonts in books, especially when it comes to things like comics or graphic novels or children's books. But it's also really important that this content be readable. And sometimes that might mean making a choice that opts for a more readable font over one that might be more stylistically, beautiful or appealing. Remember that too, that not all readers are going to be viewing your content on computer screens, and text readability is, tricky on smaller screens. So especially as you're getting your content ready for release, test it. Test it on a variety of screen sizes, test it under maybe different lighting conditions, and just make sure that the content is really consumable and easy to use. The last part of the note that we prepared was about reading systems, because reading systems share just as much responsibility as EPUB creators do in terms of, making the content accessible. Reading systems are responsible for the development and functioning of many features, especially the relationship to assistive technologies and the interactions with those technologies. Many accessibility features, like the ability to zoom in on an image or things like text-to-speech, are actually reading system responsibilities, not EPUB creator responsibilities. That you can't do it on your own. You rely on the reading system. And so we provided some additional suggestions and guidance for reading systems, mostly around things like display. So ensuring that reading systems are displaying the content as faithfully as possible and ensuring that no rendering errors may impact readability. Compatibility with assistive technologies, so making sure that the reading system is capable and ensures that assistive technologies can function as expected and make use of all of their features. And of course, accessibility features themselves, things like Zoom, text-to-speech, media playback, like media overlays. Unfortunately, I have a sample here, but GoToMeeting webinars don't let me play audio. So I'm going to describe what is happening here when I play this video, and you're going to see some of it, but you won't be able to hear it, unfortunately. So in this book has media overlays, so you can see the highlighting happening here. And just to add, for people who want to try this themselves, this is in Thorium, the EDR Lab free reading system software. So this book has media overlays, so it is highlighting the words as it goes, and it has this very lovely, comforting narrator. If anyone else is familiar with the Franklin series, it's a Canadian series about a lovely turtle named Franklin, produced by Kids Can Press. So this book has media overlays reading the text content, and as it goes through, it is going to highlight all of the words, and then, give it a second. So you're gonna see this black box appear. That is because I'm now using a screen reader. Because this book, in addition to having lovely media overlays, read aloud content, it also has detailed image descriptions. Now, had I known that this audio wasn't going to play, I would have probably grabbed the captioning. But there's an image description for this image on the screen as well as the one on the next screen, and it is delightful. And I just want to give a little shout out to my friend Laura Brady, who produced this EPUB for Kids Can Press, but also helped me find it to demo, because there's not a lot of accessible ebook content out there that has all these features. So I want to wrap up by talking about what we're doing going forwards. As we prepared this note and as we continue to work on this, we realized that there's actually a lot of questions and a lot of problems that need to be solved and that we want to solve. And we are planning to continue this work and continue incubation of some of these ideas. There's a lot of technical solutions that we know exist and can be used to make this content more accessible and actually kind of achieve that goal of making Fixed.io content fully accessible. But it's going to require not only changes to how we ask EPUB creators to potentially produce their books, but also on reading systems to produce new ways to render content. So some of the questions that we are looking to explore technical solutions for are, can we create Fixed.io content that can be displayed like reflowable content? What content should be included in text-to-speech playback? Can we enable readers to be able to customize their playback to include or exclude certain components of a book? How do we make formats like comics or manga accessible while communicating their visual properties? It's not enough potentially to just write image descriptions. How do you communicate the flow of a page or the sound effects or some of the kind of dynamic things that get lost in image description? And we are also working right now on an accompanying techniques document for the best practices document that will include things like code samples to show you, when we tell you to, merge 2 pages in the spread into a single image, include it in the reading order, what does that actually look like in practice? So keep an eye out for that. We are going to continue working on it. The note is not done. It is out there and it is ready to use, and we highly recommend using it as a reference. But we are going to continue this work and we're going to continue developing to do more. These will get shared after as well, but I did want to call out that I have some resources here. You are welcome to look at the note itself, the techniques, which is kind of bare bones right now, just fair warning. I've included some resources around image descriptions that people might find helpful. And I've also included a link to our community group. If you are at all interested in this and would like to help, maybe develop the future of this document or have things that you are interested in doing, please join us. Please join us in the community group. If your organization is interested in joining W3C as a full member, please feel free to reach out to me. I can make the appropriate connections. We would love to have you. I'll give a shout out now. The Publishing Maintenance Working Group, which is the working group responsible for EPUB and the audiobook standard. We are rechartering the group to work on the next phase of EPUB and potentially an update to EPUB to add some new features and obviously to work on some of these problems around fixed layout and such. So if that interests you at all and you want to get involved, please feel free to reach out to me or join us online at that link.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. I think that's the end of your presentation. I don't want to butt in.
That is it.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. Do you think there's an awareness, just to go back to your reading systems point about what their responsibilities are? Do you think there's enough awareness of where the responsibility starts and ends with the publisher and where it starts and ends the reading system? I know this is just your opinion, just for clarity, it's your opinion. It's not a, it's nothing.
My opinion. I think there is still some confusion. I will say, since we're talking about EAA, we'll give an example of EAA. You know, they put responsibility for synchronized media in the ebook itself, but synchronized media, like display, is a reading system responsibility. And so it's a very interesting, that's the kind of challenge when it comes to EPUB and reading systems, where there are a lot of things that if it is not in the EPUB, the reading system cannot do it. On the flip side, there's a lot of things that without the reading system, the EPUB cannot use that feature. And sometimes those lines are blurry. Media overlays is a good example of that. But other times it's not blurry. Things like text-to-speech, there's nothing a publisher can do in their EPUB to make it do text-to-speech.
Yeah.
That's on the reading system. Yeah.
And do you think it's worth, I mean, it may already be happening, but do you think it's, you know, is it advisable, or is it worth, you know, publishers liaising with reading systems maybe to find out what the, you know, to get a full understanding of what the capabilities are, but also the capabilities that might be missing, perhaps? I don't know.
Absolutely.
That's probably already happening, but yeah.
I mean, it's happening to a certain extent, but it could definitely happen more. I would say, especially in W3C, in the publishing activity, we don't have nearly enough publishers participating actively. And I think there's this assumption that because standards are technical and we're talking about technical topics, that, you know, someone who's from a publishing background who maybe doesn't even work on like the digital side of the business or on the technical digital side of the business is like, oh, you don't need me. I'm not a technical person. We need you. We need your insight. We need the use cases. You know, you may not know the language for the thing that you're asking for, but that's for the nerds, like to help you figure out. What we need to know is, like, what do you want to do with your books? What are readers potentially reaching out to you and asking for? Or, you know, your authors are asking for. These are the things that we need to know to help push the standard forward. And so, like, don't be, yes, it's technical and it's nerdy and it's silly, but, you know, please come join us. We'll work together.
Yeah, come with the questions and the challenges, and let the technical people propose the potential solutions.
Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay. Great, thank you. I'm sure there'll be more questions. I can see the question box flashing there, so I'm sure there's other questions coming. I have a few more as well, but I will move on in the interest of time. So thank you, Wendy. So Wendy, if you will be so kind as to hand over your screen or control of the screen to Duff, that would be great while I'm introducing him. So we've heard about fixed layout from the perspective of trade publishing and the EPUB standard. So now we're just going to shift our focus slightly to PDFs and STEM publishing by inviting Duff Johnson to the virtual stage. Duff is CEO of the PDF Association, and amongst other things today, is going to talk to us about PDF accessibility, the associated metadata, the advantages of PDF 2.0 for STEM publishing, and format versus software. So over to you, Duff. And we can see your screen, so it's all looking good. Thank you. Can't hear you. No. Do you want to, I can ask Wendy a couple of more questions if you like. Well, do you want to log off and log in again? Just do that quickly. Okay. So Wendy, welcome back. Let me just get my screen back up. There we go. So it's gone on to the Q&A session, but we'll just ignore that. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned landmarks in your presentation. I'm sure most people on the call will know what they are, but there might be one or two that don't. Could you just sort of explain a bit what are they, how do they work, how are they a good thing in terms of accessibility, etc.?
Yeah, so landmarks are just navigational positions in the book. They hold a slightly different meaning in EPUB than they do in, you'll see them mentioned in like WCAG as well. But I think we define them slightly differently in EPUB and a more EPUB book specific kind of way, I guess is a better way to describe it. But landmarks are essentially just like positions within the book that are, you know, the main parts of the book.
So a bit like, are they a bit like anchors then?
Yeah, so they're supposed to be, I guess, like a higher order anchor is maybe the best way to describe it. So that's like the cover, the you know, why am I blanking on names of parts of books? Preface, the main content, the end. Yes, end you know, end content.
Yeah,
all of those things that, you know, sorry, you know, you would find in, say, your table of content or the structure of your book.
So that's okay. Luckily, you had some water. So I'm just wondering how Duff is getting on. Let's just.
I'm here.
Ah, you're back. Excellent. I can let Wendy off the hook now. So thanks, Wendy, and we can hear you as well. So that's great. So let me just give you the screen now. So we like a bit of ad-libbing, don't we? So we're doing that.
Never a dull moment.
No, especially when it's live. So everything works in rehearsal, and then it doesn't work when you go live. So hopefully our attendees have a sense of humor. I'm sure they do.
So are you sharing a screen with me, or?
Yeah, I've just made you the presenter.
Okay, I don't see that.
Let me take it back and I'll try one more time. Apologies to people watching. We will get there. Right, coming your way. Duff, coming your way?
I think so. There we are.
Everyone's holding their breath. No pressure.
There we go.
Excellent, hooray.
Okay. Sorry for the technical hassle.
That's okay. You're just keeping us on our toes, Duff. So, all right, I'm going to hand over to you now. So off you go. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I'm Duff Johnson. I'm the CEO of the PDF Association, and I'm also the ISO project leader for ISO 14289, the accessibility specification or standard for PDF. I'm the co-project leader for the PDF spec standard itself, ISO 32000. So let's get underway here, I'd talk to you about PDF accessibility and accessibility metadata, as the title says. All right. Okay, so very briefly, the PDF Association, you would not be blamed if you had not heard about us before. We're kind of a technical organization. We're not really publishing specific either, as you might guess. We're a vendor neutral standards organization. We develop PDF technology. We've sort of taken over that role from Adobe. Adobe is now a member of the PDF Association, along with about 150 other member companies. We develop specifications and ISO standards. For PDF technology, we produce best practice guides, test suites, other sorts of guidance. We operate numerous technical committees, and with a major focus, I counted them up last night, and it seems that almost a third of our technical committees are focused on issues related to globally tagged PDF, but more specifically PDF reuse and PDF accessibility. So in 31 years of PDF technology, we're just now going to start, I guess, our 32nd year. So PDF has been around, as you know, for a very long time. It was invented by Adobe, who then did the two smartest things Adobe ever did was to publish the PDF specification for freely available, making it possible for anybody to create or view PDF files, not just Adobe. And then they made their own reader software freely available, which sort of set the bar for how everybody should set the bar that nobody should charge for viewing PDFs. All the money comes when you want to create or edit a PDF, and that's been the kind of industry standard for PDF going forward. So in 2001, for those in the publishing industry, you're probably familiar with PDFX, which is a narrowing of PDF to enable things like color management, make it possible to produce very reliable outcomes in the printed product. But that gave, in a sense, that came about because publishers and advertisers and others really desperately needed to get on the same page about when they shared content that would be deployed into a single platform. They needed that information. But that kind of set the taste in the industry for the idea, hey, we could do a lot with standards and with ISO standards, because after all, the whole purpose of PDF is interoperability. I can make a PDF, it looks perfect to me, I give it to you. If it doesn't look completely identical to you, we have a problem. And so PDF was really invented to deal with that. So in 2008, Adobe, or 2007, Adobe gives PDF to the ISO, which then publishes the equivalent ISO standard, ISO 32000 Part 1. Subsequently, there was like 9 years or so of development within the industry, and the industry produces the current generation PDF specification, ISO 32000 Part 2. So we get up to the present day, and if Google, as you'll see, interest in PDF continues to go up. This is not really the prediction from 20 years ago, when it was assumed that internet publishing would kind of dominate and take over the old page-based model. Turns out not so much the case, as PDF is a bunch of unique capabilities that are critical in document workflows worldwide. It's a very popular, very common format, and has no modern competition as a general purpose final form digital document format. I emphasize general purpose because publishing is only a portion of the purpose for PDF. And so what's also completely vital for PDF is that it's useful for legal purposes and invoices and all this kind of stuff too. And so that is the sort of general purpose that we refer to. We're not talking about like books and journals and magazines. No. All right, back to. Okay, so interest in PDF, as I said, it continues to rise. And in fact, as compared to the largest search terms that Google ever sees, those are declining relative to PDF in terms of popularity. So the technology is continuing to increase in popularity, not something we had even predicted 20, 25 years ago. So in the modern PDF ecosystem, the Adobe created PDF is a small fraction of the files that actually exist. All the Office suites like Microsoft Word and OpenOffice and PDF, Office Libre and so on, they produce PDF, tagged PDF, PDF natively, and also tagged PDF. Reader is no longer the dominant viewer, and PDF is no longer managed by Adobe, as I've already covered. There are thousands of software providers developing PDF software on the desktop and on the phone and server-based for all kinds of applications and solutions for PDF. but there are still major accessibility challenges. So let's talk briefly about tagged PDF, because the structure of how you achieve accessibility in PDF is completely different from the way you do it in the HTML and EPUB world. So there was PDF, and it was in 1993, as I've mentioned, and it was all about visual fidelity. Tagged PDF was introduced in PDF 1.4, 24 years ago now, almost 25 years ago. And the whole purpose of tagged PDF was to be able to add machine readable semantics to PDF content so that you could identify headings and lists and tables and so on in a way that was guaranteed to work. That is to say, yeah, machines that understand tagged PDF will get the same results. So the use of tags enables the reuse of tables and lists and also things, this is new, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, things like MathML in PDF, and they enable reflow. They do this because the architecture of the page is really distinct from the architecture of accessible content in PDF. As you see from the image here, the tag tree is on the left, and that's an abstraction of the page. We're showing like a portion of a list here with list items and with an L body. That's an unfamiliar tag if you're used to HTML, but we distinguish the label of a list from the body of the list in PDF semantics. And you can see that the text is that the respective text for that tag is highlighted. Hopefully this illustration is making clear that in PDF we achieve a fixed layout by writing a fixed layout. I mean, that was the way PDF was right from day one, and PDF is extraordinarily well capable of doing that at various levels. Tags, though, allow that same content to be reusable and reflowable and accessible and so on by way of providing an abstraction layer. So there are containers. Those containers refer to the real content, but they're not the same thing. And this creates a lot of opportunities because we can do things like span page boundaries and have combined reflow with fixed layout. On the other hand, it makes editing and managing these things dramatically more complex, and the very flexibility of PDF kind of works against us in terms of achieving accessible outcomes. So tagged PDF was developed to support accessibility cases and general reuse cases, like you can get a better result copy pasting from PDF if your PDF software is savvy about tagged PDF. It's very useful as input data when you want to consider PDFs for AI purposes, for semantic search. Similar but not the same as HTML tags. You can tell there's no L body tag in HTML, right? Because if you say list bullet in HTML, what's the tag for that? They'll look at you like you just sprouted snapdragons from your ears. So it's different, but the same, but similar. So not all PDF software is capable of tagged PDF. This is also an important thing to recognize as the limitations become more evident, as I'll talk about that. So PDF UA stands for universally accessible, is the gold standard for accessible PDF. I've been, for my sins, working on it since 2004. And PDF UA1, the first ISO standard for accessible PDF, was published in 2012 and was updated in 2014. That's all for use with PDF 1.7 files, which still predominate in the marketplace. That's the Adobe flavor of PDF that was the latest generation PDF up until about 2017. Since then, we have PDF 2.0, but 1.7 files are still predominant. PDF UA1 is supported many places by many applications. You can use OpenOffice to create a PDF UA1 file out of the egg. You can use various InDesign plugins to generate PDF UA files as well, quite readily. It's adopted by many organizations. It's referenced in US legislation, although not required. So UA1 has had a good degree of success in terms of setting itself as the standard for achieving accessibility in a PDF file, at least with respect to the PDF technology. I'll say more about that in a minute. PDF UA2 is all about PDF 2.0, and we'll talk more about that soon, including support for MathML and other namespaces, and you can now add ARIA into your PDF. So accessibility metadata. So in the PDF world, we believe you should not unnecessarily burden existing implementations. So this is very much consistent with the ARIA model where, hey, if you already have like tags for figures or lists, or just pick an example like this, and you don't go ahead and reinvent that using ARIA. And we do this because the more you create kind of new ways of doing things, you create an implementation burden, you reduce your chances of adoption. So, and accessibility is a really broad spectrum problem. It's extremely necessary that authors do the right thing in terms of producing content. Authors choose colors for a diagram, and those colors are too close in terms of color contrast, that will fail a content requirement. That's a violation of WCAG. That's important. You got to avoid that, because people with color vision disabilities will have difficulty in that context. We in the PDF space, we distinguish content requirements such as color contrast, which we regard as an author problem, from file format requirements, and those are technical problems for the format itself. And for that, in the PDF world, we have PDF UA, and EPUB is defined by EPUB 3, and other formats have their own requirements. Some formats have their own accessibility requirements as well as PDF UA and EPUB do. And then, of course, we have processor runtime requirements. These are facts about how we use these files that are shared by software. So PDF UA 1 includes clauses that set requirements for software, and accessibility APIs are another way in which the technology people decide how they're going to achieve consistent usage. So it's worth mentioning in that context that there's a real difference between file formats and software, and it's important when regarding these technologies, when thinking about accessibility, to understand the difference between the format and the software. Wendy touched on this quite a bit in terms of discussing reading systems. So, and in brief, file formats are all about the object that we're going to try and do something with. So the format defines the structure of the data. There's a specific definition. It's usually a document everybody can agree on. Sometimes it's an implementation of some sort. The capabilities are defined in that document. And I offer one example here of the PDF specification. Software, on the other hand, just uses those document structures. There are no real good standards for what the software is going to do. Like, there's no rule saying that if you're a software company and you make a junky piece of software, you can stick it in the marketplace and achieve a user base for it. Good on you, right? If it doesn't support the file format well, nobody cares, except the marketplace. That's the only place where there is anything to care, and that's something to really understand about the difference between formats and software. And so Google, this is why that distinction is why software such as Google Chrome or Adobe Acrobat or Fox Reader or Apple Preview, one of my favorite bugbears, why these things have different capabilities when it comes to PDF. The message I'm trying to deliver is PDF, or EPUB for that matter, can have all kinds of capabilities, but what really matters and what's actually in the user's control to a large extent, because they can push the market, is the software. So PDF does metadata. This is an important subject because you're dealing with the EAA environment where it's going to be necessary to report on the accessibility capabilities and the content of a document as it goes through distribution systems. PDF uses XMP, or Extensible Metadata Platform technology, also an ISO standard. It's RDF is technical details there. And this is the standard mechanism PDF is used to indicate, hi, I conform with this thing for like over 25 years, starting with PDFX. Two ways to do PDF metadata. One of them on the file as a whole, so really a declaration that this whole file is something, right? Whatever the metadata happens to be, or you could say it's a PDFX file or a PDF UA file, indicating that the entire file conforms with that print standard or that accessibility standard. You can also declare XMP on a particular object in the file. So if it was important to have a video in a PDF and you wanted to say, well, this video conforms to particular WCAG requirements, you could add that metadata, and then it's up to supporting software to go ahead and notice that the metadata is there. PDF Association has expanded upon XMP to include a PDF declarations mechanism, which will be useful for publisher-defined declarations. This is the way in which we're going to essentially propose the inclusion of accessibility metadata in publishing pipelines. So existing metadata definitions that refer to accessibility, There are the two ISO standards I've mentioned. One of them is for a 1.7 PDF, the other for PDF 2.0 PDF. And there are good reasons to go to PDF 2.0, particularly for STEM publishers. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. There are also PDF declarations, industry supported declarations that are relevant to the subject, include for well-tagged PDF, declarations allowing you to say, yes, we've not only is this file claiming to be UA1 or UA2, but it's validated that way. And in other words, our checkers have been over it. And we can, with declarations, you can define any declaration you want. But the industry has defined declarations for conformance to WCAG 2.2 and levels up to AAA. We are also developing a PDF declaration that will specify that an ONYX payload identifying the accessibility characteristics, so this is useful for the EAA, will be that we expect to publish out within the next 3 months or so on pdfa.org. So I mentioned PDF 2.0 and STEM publishing. Let me just touch on that very quickly. So first and foremost, there are major upgrades in PDF 2.0 for tagged PDF. The inclusion of MathML is one of the biggest among them, because prior to PDF 2.0, there's simply no good way to include accessible math in a PDF, period. You have to write alternative text and include your formula as like an image or something, and that satisfied 0.0% of people. So MathML in PDF is huge, and that's all by itself, and particularly for STEM publishers, a really strong reason to think about PDF 2.0. So the same upgrade that it allowed us to include MathML in PDF and include actually the definition of PDF, it allows us to include all sorts of, or declare all sorts of namespaces in PDF. You could include ChemML if you wanted to. You need software that understands ChemML on the back end, but the purpose in PDF 2.0 is to enable whole new classes of namespaces to be included. PDF can now be used as a data container, and the collections embedded and associated files features make it possible to do that in all kinds of interesting ways, so that a single PDF could actually include, the data that underlies a given paper or poster or whatever, right? So that people have said for a long time, for 25 years, that PDF is a place where data goes to die. Yeah, I get it. If you slap that information on the page and walk away, that information is hard to use again. But PDF has responded, so to speak, to this by creating facilities to allow you to include all sorts of data in the PDF and then link it directly to the PDF content. There are per-page color profiles, so you could actually have sRGB on one page, and you could have CMYK on another page. In the same PDF file, you now have support for black point compensation. You can include geospatial data so that PDFs are actually linked to the real-world map. Rich media, different kinds of video and 3D types, modern cryptography for digital signatures and cryptography. New image formats and HDR support is on the way. It'll take a couple of years, but they'll all be based on PDF 2.0. So HDR imaging is probably something of interest to publishers, broadly speaking, not just in STEM. But this is, if you're getting the impression that I want you to go to your vendors and say, hey, we've heard good things about PDF 2.0. Are you supporting it yet? I do, because that matters, and they will listen. And we in the industry are really looking forward to having more vendors support this to deliver these benefits to publishers and to others. PDF 2.0 also ISO standardized, and the accessibility standard for it, which is also far more capable than the previous accessibility standard, is already available. So there are definitely challenges to PDF accessibility. I can't pretend otherwise. I wouldn't want to. Number one, first and foremost, it was originally designed simply for visual fidelity purposes. Tagged PDF was an addition, so there are complications that come with that. Most PDF viewing happens in browsers and other software where there's not sufficient market pressure on the browser developers to add support for tagged PDF. That's a business decision on their part. And as users or as customers, users, and publishers, it's a business decision on your part to decide to give them a hard time about that. Let them know that you expect that browser loading up a PDF should be able to deliver an accessible experience. There's absolutely no reason other than the browser developer's budget and interest in profit margin to do otherwise. So I get on them, ask them to do it. Assistive technology, plenty of assistive technology is still, unfortunately, doing the wrong thing, is kind of just trying to get by scraping the page. That leaves all the semantics on the floor. PDF authoring software, even such as InDesign, still does a poor job in many use cases. It's very hard to fix up PDF files after they've been created. PDF 1.7 is good enough for a lot of people, so hard to find reasons to move the larger industry. There are a lot of reasons why there are many challenges to PDF accessibility, and as I said, didn't want to pretend otherwise. The format's extremely capable. The software vendors need to hear from you in order to improve that support. You can do something about it. You can encourage accessible authoring practices, and this is going to be true whether it's EPUB or websites or PDF or anything else. You can demand that authoring software is capable at least of producing tagged PDF. There's authoring software that can't do tagged PDF today. That software is 25 years out of date, and it's not really reasonable, frankly, unless some kind of special circumstance to not support tagged PDF anymore. As I said, all the Office suites do it. Ask your software vendors to support the current generation, latest generation, vendor neutral specification for PDF technology. And I would also add, if you want to do a good thing, and if you want to be seen doing it, donate to encourage the development of assistive technology that supports these modern capabilities in both EPUB and PDF and everywhere else. NVDA is extremely popular screen reader. It helps push the rest of the for-profit industry by developing a free open source assistive technology software. It's actually used by about half of people who use screen readers anyway. Supporting development of NVDA is something the PDF Association has done at various times. I strongly recommend that the benefits to everybody, including to yourself, are really substantial there. So I'll just add some PDF industry resources that are available from pdfa.org. We do specifications and standards. Most of these documents are freely available from our website. And I should mention that coming early next year, we are beginning to produce our own formal techniques for accessible PDF, and we're going to be working closely with WCAG to see adoption of those techniques in that context. I think I've gone over time, but there I am. I'm done.
Brilliant. Thank you, Duff. I think, yeah, brilliant. Thanks for clarifying quite a lot of things, I think, there with regards to the capabilities of PDF in light of accessibility. I think as well, really important to, to hear your sort of distinction between file format and software, and that the capabilities, the capabilities of the file format are to some extent, dependent on the capabilities of the software.
Well, it's the other way around.
Sorry, the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, go on.
It's really on the so in the file format development space, which is where I sit. Now, the industry, all those software developers, they get together, they get in a room, they make collaborative decisions that the specification for the document should look like this. So our patience as standards developers is relatively low with the software folks out there, who many of whom have been at the table. And now we say, hey, implement it, put it in the market, let people get the benefits. And this is why I emphasize the way to help make that happen as publishers, as people who pay a lot of money for software, who have a lot of needs with respect to the EAA and elsewhere, is to pick up the phone and call the people who provide your software and say, I've heard good things about PDF 2.0 and PDF UA2, and we could do a tremendous amount more than we do today with PDF. But you have to start supporting the current generation specification for PDF technology.
Yeah, and the same can be said for EPUB as well. Oh, yeah. So it's that constant dialogue. It's that constant. Neither one can exist properly without the other. So yeah, I think that's really important to make that distinction. So so thank you, and I would now like to invite back Wendy and Coco, if I may. So we have time for questions. So you haven't gone over too badly there, so don't worry. Let me just get my screen up. There we go. You can see that. So time for questions. I'm just going to see what we've got in the questions box. So bear with me while I just have a little scan. Okay. So one question, to what extent can you future-proof your fixed layout EPUBs as reading systems evolve over time? Who wants to take that? Wendy, you're looking like you might answer that.
I would say the best way to future-proof fixed layout reflow, very solid code. Use semantic elements where possible. Coco touched on this as well. Like, you know, use the appropriate properties, make sure your code is very solid. You know, try and build flexibility where you can as well, just because I think one of the biggest challenges with reading systems and evolution over time is more changes to the underlying like web engines and things, and that can sometimes impact things like rendering. But as long as you kind of build in some flexibility, things last. They're generally fine. I mean, reflow is almost never a problem. It's really more, and honestly, like I would say, you know, using like commonly accepted properties and like avoiding things like experimental properties, or as we've defined in like the latest versions of this EPUB standard, like things that are deprecated or we're advising are less used, move away from those. So like something like our custom CSS from years ago, like don't use those anymore. Please use standard CSS. Keep on top of, you know, those things, and you're going to be fine. Your books are going to last.
Thank you. Coco, did you want to add anything?
I think I would agree with Wendy. There may be some degree of maintenance that you would have to do, but I think whatever comes will always be built on a solid backbone of well-structured code. So as long as you are focusing on standards, and as long as your code is well-structured, yeah, you should be fine.
Okay, great, thank you. And Duff, sort of similar question to you really, but I'm going to change it from fixed layout EPUB to PDF. Same question, to what extent can you future-proof your PDFs as reading systems evolve over time? Or software, etc.
Yeah, so PDF is, because PDF's sort of core mission is interoperability, right? Everybody should have the same experience. PDF is reliable in a sense to the extent to which a given PDF file conforms with the existing standards. So paying attention to whether or not you're producing and shipping files that actually are high quality PDF 1.7 or PDF 2.0 files, or are high quality PDF UA files, is important. And so that's really the responsibility of the software developer who you're using. But being a more literate, as it were, or more savvy consumer of the technology, what the vendors are offering, you will be a big driver towards that. So asking them, are they supporting PDF 2.0? That's something you might have heard of, and that they might have an easy answer for that. But because the standard is actually freely available to you, you can be very specific. You can get down into a particular feature. Notice that the feature is is less than ideally supported, and then be very particular to the vendor. So PDF is well structured to enable you to have an enormous amount of confidence going forward in terms of the stability of the format. And it's really about whether or not you're using software that attends to that standard.
Okay, thank you. Got another question. So yeah, so I just wanted to ask, probably to Coco initially, do you think, I think you touched on it in your presentation, do you think now, if we're not already seeing it, that we will see more of direct collaboration between print book designers, production teams, and ebook production in terms of sort of both sides working together to understand and produce accessible titles. And I'm thinking really here of fixed layout, hence, well, because we're in a fixed layout webinar. But I just wondered, in your experience, is that something you're seeing? Is that
stepping away from the accessibility conversation, I know it's something that we have done.
Yeah.
Whenever a producer cares enough about their title, they always have an interest in what we're doing with the content. As a matter of fact, we have worked on some titles with other departments and stakeholders to further enhance the print book for digital. So that conversation does exist and is ongoing. With regards to accessibility, I think that this is fairly new ground. And there's certainly been an openness to it on the print side as well. People like pretty much across the entire business are eager to learn more about this. So I would say that yes, there is a lot of potential there, and a lot of departments and stakeholders have already shown an interest in how accessible their books can be. I think with fixed layout, that's slightly trickier because we are trying to, again, maintain that parity with the print book, and sometimes that by its like inherently enforces certain restrictions on how far we can go. And so yeah, we will be having those conversations. Stakeholders are open to having those conversations. The question is, how do we avoid crossing that line into telling them how they should be producing their works?
Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a delicate balancing act there. Yeah, I can see that. Wendy, did you have any thoughts on this from, I don't know, from what you're seeing at W3C or even from the Kobo side of things? Is there any, are you seeing sort of changes in collaborations or sort of different types of communities collaborating where perhaps they hadn't before?
I'll admit I don't get much insight from this side of the table, but
Yeah.
I think like what Coco describes is like a fantastic initiative, and I hope more publishers kind of take note if they're not doing this already, because I think like one point I'd love to reemphasize that he made is that these accessibility requirements and these accessibility changes or needs can make the print content better as well. Things like color contrast, for especially, like that happens in print as well, and so if you're not paying attention to it in print, and obviously it creates a problem in digital, it's going to be a problem in print as well. And so I think there's like a huge opportunity for publishers, to the digital and the print side, to work together to produce better content that works for everybody, not just the digital side of the business.
Yeah, definitely. And one of my, going off piste a little bit, one of my little bugbears, if I may, is font size, and ordering a book online, having it delivered, only to open it up to find out, with my now aging eyes, that I can't read it. It's, the font size is too small. So had I known in advance when I was ordering online what the font size and the font type was, I may have ordered the ebook or made a different decision or something like that. So just little things that everybody, that the industry can do to just sort of help with an informed purchase decision, I think. It's really important for the print book as well as the digital book. So I have gone off piste, so I apologize. Yeah, so Duff, did you have any sort of observations there in terms of, if you're seeing different types of people collaborating, different types of roles, different types of conversations?
In terms of coordinating in terms of collaborating in terms of achieving, as I understood your question, ideally, in principle, the author technology provider in design, let's just pick out of a box, could be anything, is you should be able to just push a button and out comes your nice EPUB, out comes your nice PDF, job done. You shouldn't have to think about it, as long as the thing is authored correctly. That's eventually where we'll get. How fast we get there, that's entirely up to that's entirely up to market pressure. Period.
Mm.
You know,
I do think
you
kind of
don't
like
ask for it, you'll never get it.
Yeah.
If you're yelling about it every day, you'll probably get it in a few months.
Going off that, I think there's actually, and I've talked about this a bit in like WCAG, and as we're developing the next version of WCAG as well, as I think there is actually a great deal of responsibility on the tooling side of all of our industries, not just publishing, but web development and marketing and all of that, for the tools that we use to take on some of the burden and pressure to make things more accessible, because there's a lot to know, there's a lot to remember, there's a reason why people like me exist in businesses that just focus on accessibility, because there's a lot to keep in your head at all times. And so it would be really nice to have tools that when you go to maybe you go to save your file as an EPUB and it's like, whoa, like, just so you know, the colors on page 47 are like really not gonna work, or did you know, like, the font is maybe too small on this page, or things like that it doesn't stop you from producing the file. We'll never be able to do that, but just to give people more information and more tools to do a better job and inform them in ways that they may not know about. They may not have known about the color contrast, or they may not have known about the font size. The tools can do that for us.
Yeah, good point. Question for Duff. Could you talk about how well or not well the current version of InDesign can generate tagged PDF? Is there some way you need to create your file in InDesign to ensure that it is tagged?
So I've mentioned InDesign as an example. It's kind of against my job to talk about or characterize particular software packages. I'm kind of a neutral industry representative. I do know that InDesign, I mean, it's not a surprise, all software has limitations. InDesign is also software with limitations. It also has a kind of an ecosystem of support developers that kind of produce plugins and scripts and so on that do things that the InDesign folks haven't done yet. So I don't have any particular advice on how to do something better with InDesign. It's not even something I really know for myself. But I would offer a similar point that I've made before, which is that I do know the solution of the problem of getting them to do more is to let them know you want it. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for the software vendors to hear detailed complaints and praise sometimes, but mostly complaints from users. And the more detailed and the more specific, the better. Hey, we need better support for this feature. The advantage of freely available specifications, whether it's EPUB or PDF, is that it's possible to, with some degree of technical awareness, identify the feature that's poorly implemented. And then when you deliver high quality, or I should say very specific advice to the software developer, hey, this isn't working right like the document says it should. That is the exact kind of prod that they need to better develop and market their solutions that will meet that need.
Okay, thank you. And just in the interest of time, I have one more question, unless I think we've answered all of the questions most of the questions in the box there. This one came in yesterday to our inbox, which is great. We like to get them that way as well. So this is from somebody who works on literary and classics editions, where textual notes or apparatus are sometimes tied to the source text via, for example, page numbers, line numbers, and lemata. If the source text is prose, the page and line numbers have to be fixed during typesetting, and the text can't be converted into a reflowable format. Is there any guidance or best practice in such cases, especially regarding line numbering, Is there a way to ensure a screen reader can distinguish marginal line numbers from running text? Can screen readers cope with line numbers in increments of 5, etc.? There's quite a lot of questions here, so I will just sort of summarize them quickly. So I think it's really about the best practice for the scenario stated at the beginning. Is there a quick way for someone using a screen reader to search for the specific page and line number given in the apparatus? A lot of questions, but on the same theme.
I can offer the following very briefly. That capability is part of PDF 2.0. Okay, that exact capability, distinguish the line number from the stuff that's associated with the line number. Whether or not that is available to you as an author or a user is purely a function of the software. To my knowledge, nobody supports that feature in PDF 2.0 yet with their software. That should not be taken in any way as a statement of fixed statement or a prediction about what happens by the end of 2025, for example. So if that feature matters to you, bug your vendors to get it, and it is possible. And I could send me an email. I'd be happy to send you a link to the clause in the specification that identifies that feature by name. And you send that to the vendor. You say, do that. And it's on them, right? Otherwise, you'll go find somebody else who will.
There's a theme here.
Push your vendor. Yeah.
Wendy, did you want to add anything from the EPUB perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of the same story, to be honest. This is something that is possible in HTML. Like, you can attach line numbers, associate them, through a variety of different means in HTML. Like, that's the wonder of HTML, right? It's very, very flexible. Now, if you want to go for the best possible experience in terms of, sometimes hiding them or sometimes keeping these kind of artifacts in the text or taking them out of the text, especially for assistive technology like playback, that's where the gap is. Similar to PDF, where it's possible. There's no programmatic reason why, especially if we use something like DPUB ARIA properties on this, or ARIA properties in general, or just tagging of any kind, we couldn't have a reading system feature that says don't play line numbers or play line numbers. This is just more a matter of nobody's asked for it, or not enough people have asked for it, that it's become it's risen to the point where our reading system says, hey, that's actually a good idea, we should do that. That's not to say there isn't a reading system out there that maybe doesn't have this as a feature. I've seen some really particularly some of the more accessibility focused reading applications like Dolphin Easy Reader and things like that have some really, really granular features for their TTS and stuff. But we just don't have a standardized way to do it. And there's just not enough, I think, ask for things like this. Not to say that it's not important, and not to say that we couldn't have it. It's totally possible. It's just not there right now.
Okay, so the more people and the more frequently this is asked for, the more likely it is to be developed and to be put into
no magic
standards and systems. And yeah. Okay, Coco, did you want to add anything just before we finish for the day on that?
No, I would agree with Wendy. As far as I know, there are no native semantic elements in HTML for marking up poetry, and I don't think I've ever encountered any ARIA roles for identifying poetic internal structures. So I would say, yeah, if it's something that you want, you feed it back to the group, and it'll be something that they work on. But at this point, you could style it, but I don't think there's any way to programmatically make a distinction between the body text and the line number that's in the HTML.
Right. Okay, well, thank you for answering that. So we're out of time, or I've just literally gone over. So before we thank you for attending, I would just like to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to our 3 speakers today. So On behalf of everyone attending and on behalf of BIC, I'd like to say thank you to Coco, to Wendy and to Duff for not only taking time out of their day today, but also taking time out of their schedules to do the preparation and the rehearsals and everything else leading up to this event. So thank you very much for that and for your insights as well. Very helpful. We'll make the presentation slides for this event available on our website shortly, and a recording of the whole webinar will be sent to you all as soon as possible. However, given the time of year and the fact that it's BIC's last working day of 2024 tomorrow, this might be in the new year, so please do bear with us while we do that. So don't panic if you haven't received it by tomorrow. You will definitely get it in the new year. The recording will also be posted to the BIC's YouTube channel in about a month's time as well. So because you've attended today, you'll get it a lot quicker than that. And if you're signed up to our mailing list, the link is on the screen, you'll be notified of when it's on YouTube as well as all the other activities, projects, work, meetings, events, etc. that we're doing. So finally then, not finally, before I thank our attendees, I'd just like to remind you as well of our accessibility hub. Do go and have a look, the link's there. And finally, I would like to say thank you to you, our attendees, for coming today. Again, particularly as I'm sure some of you, this is your second to last day of work for 2024, so thank you for sparing the time. Please do stay in touch with us. Find out more about what we do on our website. As I've said, you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing at BIC via our mailing list. So happy holidays, happy new year to you all when it arrives, and we hope to see you at another BIC event in the near future. So take care until then. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.